New Indiana basketball head coach Darian DeVries must hit the transfer portal hard, and there's already names flying around.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Hoosiers your first spot, your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And the NCAA Tournament starts today. We had great play-in games the first 2 days. The tournament begins, and while the Hoosiers aren't in it, there are a handful of Big Ten teams. We'll have some fun at the end of the show today, just making some predictions there. Plus, I think DeVries won his opening press conference, said some things that I feel like Indiana fans are going to be excited about. We'll break that down in just a little bit. But the thing that everybody wants to know, and the thing that everybody's going to be keeping an eye on, is where does Darian DeVries and his new staff, which we'll get to as well, where do they go in the transfer portal? Because we already know that several players on this Indiana team from just this past season have run out of eligibility, right? Umar Ballo, Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, guys like that, right? They're not coming back because they can't. We do know, however, that Luke Goody, who, of course, transferred in from Illinois, had a pretty good season, I would say, for Indiana. By far our best three-point shooter and our most consistent, just flat-out shooter in general. He is going to appeal and try to get an extra year of eligibility. Now, you're dealing with the NCAA, so you know how that's going to go. We may know tomorrow. We may know in 10 years from now. You just don't know. And so I feel like if you are Darian DeVries, you can't bank on that. Unless you get word on the back end that it's going to happen, I don't feel like you can bank on Luke Goody coming back. We also know, and we mentioned this yesterday, but just want to catch people up who maybe haven't seen it. Gabe Cupps, right? The guard who was Mr. Ohio basketball, has been with Indiana for a couple of years now, had surgery early on, did not participate in most of this season in 24 and 25. He has announced that he is going to be entering the transfer portal. And so while that's a loss, yes, in terms of a number, you just weren't getting a whole lot of production out of him anyway. I don't know what his role was going to be with a new coach, a new staff, things like that. And so we wish Gabe Cupps nothing but the best. The big name that is leaving Indiana is Malik Reneau. And I have a name that's already entered the portal that I think the Hoosiers should go after, and a great connection with Darian DeVries. So that's coming up shortly. But the name that's leaving that's big right now is Malik Reneau, who, yes, it says and has announced that he intends to enter the transfer portal when it opens up in just a few days, and that he's going to be looking for a new home. There were reports and some rumblings on the back end that DeVries wanted to at least talk to Malik Reneau. Now, whether that means you were going to convince him to stay, you wanted to just see how things went, you wanted to at least give him the option, I don't know. I'm not in that meeting. Sorry. I wish I was. I wish I could bring that to you on Locked On Hoosiers, but I'm not that high up in the Indiana circle with the new head coach. Apologies on that. But he did want to have a conversation with him. And you know what? I think I would too, because you're talking about a guy with Malik Reneau who has been here for several years. He's been through hell and back. Let's just be honest. And you want to have a conversation with him, and maybe DeVries feels he can build a team around him. Maybe he feels he can build something with Malik on a future roster. Or maybe he's just looking to get a little insight and at least do his courtesy or due diligence and offer it up to him. If you're Malik, look, we could all sit here and say what we would do, but it's his decision. And ultimately, he's going to do what he thinks is best for him. Again, he's been through a lot here in Indiana. And now it's a new coach coming in, one that you don't really know, I'm sure, one that you would have to relearn. And maybe he just wants to go somewhere else and get a fresh start. And for a guy with his skill set, I think he'll be just fine. I think somebody will pick him up and he'll be just fine. And so I think he's gone. I don't think he comes back to IU, but maybe something changes and he does return to Bloomington. But now we try to focus on where does Indiana go in the transfer portal to start building a new roster, because you're probably going to get more names entered. There are guys thinking about it right now on what they want to do. Mackenzie Mbako is a great example. Miles Rice is a good example. Cannon Carlisle as well. Those types of guys have to decide what they want to do. And you also have to remember this is a two-way street with the transfer portal, right? This is a new head coach with a new staff that he is still putting together, where they're going to step in the front door and they're going to have one-on-one meetings. And they're going to say, after further review, we don't feel like you fit with what we're going to try and do here. We don't think you are going to belong, or we don't really need you. We recommend that you go ahead and try to find a new home. We're going to do our best to help you out with that. We appreciate what you've done in Indiana before we got here, but we feel that you should find somewhere else to go. Or Darian DeVries and his staff sit down and say, hey, man, we love what you do. We see some potential. We think you can fit in our system. We want you to stay. That's how this thing works. This is not just the players, whether they decide they want to stay or not. The coaches have a lot to say here too, believe it or not. And I mentioned DeVries' staff. While we haven't seen a whole lot yet, the press conference was just yesterday, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. He's got a lot of work to do. And I think you are going to put your staff together before you start going out to the transfer portal and you start going out to high school recruiting. So I think that's sort of the timeline here, is finalize your staff. I would assume mostly of his West Virginia guys, maybe some old school guys as well, maybe a couple of Indiana guys, just to make sure that you've got that represented on your staff. And then you hit the transfer portal, and then you start hitting high school recruiting, because you got to make up grounds there. If you are Indiana and now Darian DeVries, there is a name, though, in the transfer portal that I want to run by you here as we finish up this segment. And he is somebody that has a connection with Darian DeVries, because he played for DeVries during his time at Drake. He played 2 years at Drake, 2 years at Drake, and then just transferred to DePaul and played Big East basketball, which is Power 5. I know DePaul's not very good, and man, they were so close to a win in the Big East tournament. I thought they were going to pull it off. They just didn't. But this guy's a 3-year starter. Okay, or a 2-year starter, 3-year player. Don't think he started his first year at Drake. But Connor Enright is a transfer guard who's leaving DePaul this season as a 2-year starter. He averages 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. His shooting numbers are not just going to blow you away, okay? He is not the just most efficient shooter, but he's more of just a dish it out, be there type of guard. And really, you're looking for experience. You're looking for somebody who's familiar with DeVries and his system, and hopefully people on his staff. And maybe you improve those offensive numbers a little bit, because shooting's a big deal, right? Darren said that in his presser, which we're talking about in just a second. So keep your eyes out on Connor Enright, a DePaul transfer guard. Whether he ends up here or not, I have no idea. I just think there's some connections here. He's in the portal, and it wouldn't be a bad place to start for head coach DeVries. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll talk about that opening press conference, things that AD Scott Dolson said, things that DeVries said, and why you should be excited after the opening press conference. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. You can get everything all in one place. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan for long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. That's monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. You can use their feature called Game Time Picks. Its curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they have got it. And I use the Game Time app all the time. I've used it for sports and music. I have friends that have used it for comedy. I have grandparents that have used it for theater. If they can use it, you can use it. I'm telling you, it's super, super easy. And they really do have the best deals at every event that I want to go to. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCollege, all right, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Again, appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And for the audience that has been here, kind of newer here, look, we're growing like crazy. And I appreciate you. And with all the crazy news going on, it's understandable. And I'm just happy that you're here. And so if you're listening on audio, right, if you download us on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or however you get your audio podcast, and you're listening on the way to work or in the kitchen, in the shower, I don't care. I just appreciate you doing that. And if you would, make sure you turn on your notifications so you don't miss any new episodes of Locked On Hoosiers. Leave us those 5-star reviews. Follow us if you can. Just keep up with us on your audio platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you are keeping up with us there on the video side of things, I ask you to do just a few things really quickly. Hit that thumbs up, like that video, helps it get out there. More Indiana fans, more college basketball fans can figure out what's going on here in Bloomington. Also, comment your thoughts down below. Who should the Hoosiers go after in the transfer portal? What should the Hoosiers go after in the transfer portal? And how do you feel about the opening press conference for Darian DeVries? I want to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comments. And then if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Okay, we are still making a push for 5,000 subs. And folks, we are just over 20 away. I think we can do it today. I really do. I think we can hit 5K subs today. So help me do that. Help and be a part of that. I really do appreciate your support. So yesterday would have been Wednesday. That was the opening presser for the new head coach of Indiana basketball, Darian DeVries. And really excited to see him, or I guess I was excited to see him. I think a lot of fans were eager and wanted to see him, hear him, and kind of hear what this process was like and how this process went down. And I'll give a ton of credit to AD Scott Dolson, right, the athletic director at IU. I'll give him a ton of credit because I think he said a lot. Let's start there. He said a lot. His opening presser, his opening statement was about 5 times as long as DeVries's was, but he had a lot of good things to say. And he talked about how he thanked the fans, right, for going through what we've gone through, and how you had patience throughout all of this and what they were looking for and kind of how this process went. And he told some stories about how he didn't really know a whole lot about DeVries, but he had started to notice him, right? He noticed him in a couple of tournaments when he was at Drake. He noticed him when he was at West Virginia, when they played Gonzaga in the Bahamas. And he kind of took notes about it and had it in the back of his mind. And then when we found out we were going to be going in a coaching search, DeVries was definitely on the list. And so he talked about his modern offense, which I think is a really big deal. More on that in a moment from DeVries' comments. So you could tell by Scott Dolson, he was really excited about this. And he felt that this was the right way to go. And remember, Indiana used a coaching search firm to help them with this process. This was not just one person. There was the firm that helped get this started and helped along the way. It's the same one that hired Kurt, or I guess helped hire Kurt Signetti on the football side. Yes, that's worked out pretty well so far, I would say, in year one. And can't guarantee that that's going to be the same with DeVries, but you hire the same group and they go out and recommend this guy. And so that's why Indiana did it. And they felt that he was the right fit, the right type of guy, him and his family. That's what Scott Dolson had to say. And I think you have to be excited for what he said. Then Darian DeVries took the podium. And while his opening statement wasn't as long, it was still really good. And he gave a ton of credit to West Virginia, which I hope their fans hear. I hope their fans understand. I mean, let's be honest here. He took a better job. He took more money and he has better facilities. He has better NIL. He has better everything in Bloomington than he did in West Virginia. Like it's a no-brainer, folks. It's not that hard to realize why he did it. And I hate that he had to come on and defend himself and make sure that he covered his you know what when leaving West Virginia. And he had great things to say. He admitted he wanted to go there. He wanted to be there long term. He loved it for him and his family. But when he basically said, when Indiana comes calling, you pick up the phone, which is what I've been telling everybody. And people outside of this fan base refuse to believe it. When IU calls, you pick up the phone. And then it's really hard to say no. Some have done it, sure. He didn't say no. And he felt that he couldn't pass it up. And now he's going to be making $5 million a year. He's going to have $7 million in NIL funds to spend and go purchase a team. That is, it's a dream for a guy like him who was an assistant coach for 17, 18 years at Creighton. He coached at Drake. He was at West Virginia. And now he's got the job of a lifetime. How can you blame him? How can you be upset that he took a better job with better everything? It blows my mind on people flipping out about this and calling him a coward and West Virginia fans calling for his head. It's unbelievable. And I think it's downright dirty, but it is what it is. But then he was starting to talk about his philosophy, and people, the media, were starting to ask him questions about what he's going to focus on and what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish here at Indiana. And the big one that stood out to me, and I would assume you as well, IU fans, is he talked about the offensive game plan and that shooting is a priority. This past season at West Virginia, they were a top 40 shooting team in terms of volume. Now, their percentage was fine. It wasn't great, but they shot a lot of threes. They were in the top 40 or 50 of attempts per game, and were getting there in the efficiency numbers. Now, some of their best shooters were hurt. We've told you about that, including Tucker DeVries, who, as we are saying, I think all signs are leading to him being at Indiana, right? One of the better shooters on that West Virginia team from a year ago. But he said shooting the basketball is crucial. He said you can't win if you don't shoot it well, which you would think is a common sense statement. But my goodness, what we've gone through here in Bloomington the last handful of years, it has been miserable to watch these teams shoot the basketball. Indiana was in the bottom third, bottom fourth, bottom fifth, bottom eighth of college basketball in shooting the three, whether it was volume or efficiency. It's been horrific. And you wouldn't think it'd be that difficult. You wouldn't even think it'd be that difficult with the team we had this past year, right? With McKenzie and Baco, and I will even put Miles Rice in there. Definitely Luke Goody. I mean, goodness gracious, if we didn't have him, our numbers would be dead last in college basketball. And so you heard DeVries talk about how he wants that to be a focal point, which tells me, Hoosiers fans, he's going to get shooters in the portal, other than his son Tucker, who is a great shooter, shot at over 40% in his 8 games when he was healthy. You're going to get shooters, and you're going to let them shoot, and you're going to run offense to get them open and encourage them to take open shots. I'm not against what Indiana has done in the past, which dump it down low and work inside out. The problem is Indiana would work inside, and that was it. They didn't go outside. They didn't move. They just went down inside. We were one of the highest points per games teams in the country in the paint because we didn't have anybody on the outside. And we would get in those rhythms where we would shoot 25 threes a game, but only make 3 of them. And it's like, come on, guys, what are we doing? I feel very confident and what DeVries and his staff want to do with offensive efficiency. He said, we want to score in the first 12 seconds. Did you see that quote? He said, you get a turnover on a missed shot. We want to push the basketball and score in the first 12 seconds because he feels that that's when the defense is most vulnerable. Sounds like something I think I've said on this show, right? I think my everydayers know that. It's almost like I've said, hey, push the basketball. If you push the ball, quit playing 5-on-5. That's old school stuff. Quit playing 5-on-5 basketball. If you get a rebound, you get a turnover, push the ball. And that's what DeVries is saying too, is get past them, don't let them set up, and let's take advantage of that. So those two things really stood out to me with his offensive game plan, his identity, his kind of what he sees for what they're going to do. Whether it works or not, who knows? And you got to get the right players to do that. But I think DeVries won the press conference. I really do. I think he was impressive. I think he was sharp. I'm curious on what you fans think after watching and listening. If you haven't, go see it. I'm telling you, it's worth your 20 minutes to go and listen to it. I recommend you do because I think Darian DeVries won his opening press conference. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll have a little fun. Even though Indiana is not in the NCAA tournament, let's make some fun predictions. I filled out my bracket, not going through the whole thing, but just want to look through maybe some of the Big Ten teams who can make a run and a couple of upset picks here and there. We'll have some fun wrapping it up here on the final segment of Locked On Hoosiers. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings has snuck up on us again, as it does every single year. I vote that we just stick to one time, but that's not a popular opinion sometimes. And if you're feeling that you lost that hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power you through. Whether you're staying up late to watch the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, which I try to do a lot, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up wherever you need it. Look, we're all going to be staying up late. I've already stayed up late the past 2 nights watching the first 4, and now the tournament gets going. You're going to need something to keep you awake. 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day, right? I drink it in the morning. I'll drink one after lunch. I do my radio show. I have to get the energy to get going and stay going, and 5 Hour Energy really helps me do that. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So there you go. Be sure you check that out as well. That is our bracket breakdown show brought to you by Amazon. That's Isaac Shade, Andy Patton from our Locked On College Basketball show. So be sure that you check that out as well. And so here in our final segment, just want to go over the bracket a little bit and have a little fun, make some predictions for the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, right, Hoosiers are not in it. We were robbed again of the NCAA tournament, but that's okay. And I think for the Big Ten, right, we actually had a conversation about this on the Big Ten squad. So be sure that you go and check that out. We talked about the Big Ten and teams that can make a run in the NCAA tournament, make some noise and maybe try to win the whole dang thing. And look, I've been high on Michigan every single I guess I've been high on them since the start of the year, even before the season started, because I think they are super, super talented. They brought in a bunch of transfers. Dusty May is legit. We know that, right? He was a part of the names that fans wanted for Indiana to go after even before this year, right? And I think Michigan, while they have a tough draw with UC San Diego making the tournament for the first time, they have to probably go up against Texas A&M and then most likely the number 1 overall seed in Auburn in the Sweet 16. I think Michigan can make a run. I really, really do. Michigan State, of course, the 2 seed. Could you imagine Michigan State and Michigan meeting in the Elite Eight? I think it's very possible. If you think about it, I think those two teams are very good. I think they're both Final Four good. I really, really do. You start to look down in the bottom left. Maryland is a team that sticks out because of how talented they are. They just don't have the depth, man. They just don't have the dudes after the 6th or 7th guy. But those first 6 or 7 are really, really good. I think Derek Queen's having an incredible year. I think Maryland's draw is not that bad. You've got Grand Canyon. I think Colorado State will upset Memphis, so I think that's who the Terps will get. And then you try to beat Florida in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite Eight, and I think it's favorable from there too. You maybe play St. John's or a sneaky Texas Tech team. So watch out for Maryland in the bottom left-hand portion of the bracket. I'm not buying UCLA. I think they're bad. I'm not going to buy them. Maybe beating Utah State, sure, but they're not going to get past Tennessee, in my opinion. Illinois will now play Xavier thanks to the Musketeers coming back to beat Texas in the first 4 game on Wednesday night. And look, I think Illinois is solid. I just worry of how streaky they are. I think they're good enough to beat Xavier. I just don't know how far they're going to go because, again, they're streaky offense. Purdue, they're terrible. They're losing a High Point. Moving on from that. Then you look up to the top hand right. I think Wisconsin's got a chance because of how good they shoot the basketball. I think Oregon has a chance because of how good they shoot the basketball. So the Big Ten has opportunities. I just don't know how far we're going to go. And I think it's Michigan and Michigan State as our best chance to make a Final Four and win a national championship. I think I'd put Maryland in that 3rd spot for teams that have a chance in the NCAA tournament. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here. Really, really do appreciate it. Again, if you're listening on audio or watching on YouTube, just like these videos, follow us, subscribe, comment, however you can help us. We really, really do appreciate it. We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. All right, so until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.